Alrighty, so it's time to do another News of the Week episode on this Wednesday late afternoon and approaching evening. And it's official. FC Dallas have acquired Paul Arriola in exchange for a record amount of general allocation money transfer within the league of up to $2.3 million to DC United. Now, apparently the full detail of this move is that DC will receive $1.5 million general allocation money this year, and then they receive an additional $500K general allocation money next year. And then there's also the performance incentive, where if Paul Arriola meets the performance incentive, then DC will also receive up to $300,000 general allocation money, which that's where it puts total to $2.3 million. But either way, what a big blockbuster move this is, and the fact that, yeah, I mean, I've said before where it feels like with how the salary cap is going up and how teams are getting more general allocation money by each year, we're going to see more of these deal. And that, I think a couple of years you would say that maybe this is kind of like a $1.5 or $1 million general allocation money move, but you know, with how the salary cap has gone up and with teams getting more general allocation money, we're now at the $2 million mark, and that I won't be surprised in a few years we might even see teams might exchange player for about $3 or $4 million general allocation money. But either way, you know, this is definitely a good signing for FC Dallas, and for once start to show some ambition, because you know this season I think they are trying to prove people that, you know, they're not just going to rely heavily on their academy to succeed. I mean, I think last year it was almost kind of a warning sign that, you know, they just simply cannot rely on their academy to get them to the playoffs. They need to go out into the transfer market and actually spend smart in terms of some of their signing. And Paul Arriola will definitely be a guy that will be a great upgrade to this FC Dallas team, and especially for a guy that is a U.S. men's national team veteran. Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a great signing for FC Dallas. But for DC United, I mean, I've said before, you know, I think this one is going to hurt them, in that, you know, yes, they get a lot of money out of that, but, you know, if Arriola does do well with FC Dallas, then yeah, maybe they might think about regretting letting him go, even with a record amount of general allocation money that they're about to receive. Though I will say that because they receive so much of that, now they have the option in terms of maybe getting a guys within the league to replace Paul Arriola, and I think there are players within the league that could have similar quality to him, and that, you know, with the $2.3 million that they of course receive, they definitely have enough to of course find a decent replacement. Now Charlotte FC have officially signed Polish striker Karol Swidericki, I think that how you say him, as the club's first ever DP from PAOK in the Greek Super League. And again, you know, this is something that I've talked about before a couple of News of the Week episode ago, that it was between Charlotte or the Philadelphia Union that he is going to be coming to MLS and joining those team. And in the end, it's actually the expansion team, Charlotte FC, of course, signed him to a DP contract, and we shall see how good he is going to be, because, you know, I've heard people say that he's not actually as good as you think it is, but we'll see. I mean, maybe he'll do well here coming into MLS, and I think there's definitely that pressure to do so, because when you're labeled as the first ever designated player in club history, you know that expansion club has a lot of expectation for you, and they're definitely hoping that Karol Swidericki will be a guy that can score at least 10 plus goals for this team. Now the Columbus Crew have signed a guy that I am not going to pronounce his last name. I think he's I know he's from Africa, but I think he is a Nigerian. But I'm just gonna go by his first name, that is James, because obviously I know how to pronounce it. And he is coming to Columbus on loan from Real Zaragoza, and apparently, you know, from what I heard, is that this guy maybe is just going to the Crew as a depth piece and not really just a starter, because, you know, when he was with Real Zaragoza, he was actually just more used as a utility player. But nevertheless, I have also heard that there is good thing of the fact that he can be decent to be used for depth. And, you know, for the Columbus Crew, knowing what happened last year, the injury crisis that they had, they're just trying to sign as much players and get as much depth in each off the possession as possible, so that they don't have that same issue where they thought that they had enough depth, and no, they actually did not have enough depth pieces to cover those star players that went out with injury. Now the San Jose Earthquakes. So this is something that I've heard a couple of days ago, and I couldn't believe that when I heard this, the fact that the Quakes are going to sign Francisco Calvo from the Chicago Fire. But then, as the day goes on, it seems like most likely that was going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I just had a feeling it was. It seems like it's about time that the Quakes are going to announce. I mean, after all, the Quakes did announce that they are going to get a defender soon, and I was hoping maybe it's going to be a decent defender, but no. Instead, it's actually Francisco Calvo from from the Chicago Fire, and get him off of free agency. Now, I will say this, I know everybody they hate this move, and I personally don't like this move whatsoever because, during the time when Calvo was with Minnesota, yeah, I still cannot believe the Loons signed him to a DP contract. I mean, I get that when they signed him to a DP contract in the expansion year, they didn't know that he was going to be terrible in MLS, but yeah, the way that he's been performing with the Loons, and eventually the Loons kind of cut him and decided to well, they didn't actually cut him. They actually trade him to the Chicago Fire, and I thought the Fire was kind of dumb to try to take that contract, and they found out the hard way because he was equally as terrible when he was with the Chicago Fire compared to them with Minnesota. And the fact that now the Quakes are giving him a chance, yeah, I can see why there's a lot of Quakes fan, and including myself, that is not happy with this move. But that being said, it is only a 1 year contract, and that if he actually does not do well this year, then they can easily just kind of cut loose. But if you're going to sign a defender and try to maybe even get some depth in terms of the defense, which I think that's one of the areas the Quakes definitely need, you do not sign a guy that basically is a walking traffic cone. And I hope now that we won't see one of our two center back in Tanner Beeson or Nathan gets injured, because if that's the case, then unfortunately I have to suffer through the Francisco Calvo situation, and I've already suffered enough when he was with Minnesota. Oh, speaking of Tanner Beeson, he signed a new contract with the San Jose Earthquakes, so that's good. Definitely great news for the Quakes, because that's one of the things that I've talked about in a video a couple weeks ago. I was worried the Quakes are not going to sign some of their best player to a contract extension, with their contract being up at the end of the season, and it seems like they probably watched that video, or at least Chris Leach probably watched that video, and he immediately locked up Tanner Beeson to a contract extension. I mean, I'm not trying to kind of flex about some of the videos, but I'm saying maybe some GM does watch these video and finds it very informational, that they might actually decide to do the right move. Now, speaking of bad DP that Minnesota United have signed, they have decided to release one of the worst DP that they've signed besides Francisco Calvo, and that of course is Thomas Chacon, who they not only released him but also had to exercise a buyout contract. Though this does open up another DP spot, which I believe now Minnesota has two designated player spot, because Reynoso, I think, is the only player that occupied as a DP, and Jan Gregovic is no longer a DP with this team after he was let go, and the Quakes of course pick him up in the re-entry draft. But either way, I said that this is of course one of the worst, if not the worst DP that Minnesota have signed, is because Chacon barely played for the Loons. And I will say that this is probably the worst, and even worse than Francisco Calvo, because at least Calvo played for Minnesota, and at one point he was actually the captain of the team during the first couple of years, or at least in the first two seasons when this team was in the league. But for Thomas Chacon, he barely featured. And again, I will never know why exactly he wasn't featured in this team. There was so much hype, the fact that when he was signed with this team, that he is going to do well, and that it seems like the Loons are following the formula that many teams are doing right now, which is go down to South America, find these hidden gems, develop them, and eventually sell them off for a big profit. And unfortunately, it just did not work out for Chacon, who, again, I heard that maybe he just had some issue in terms of settling in life in the U.S., which I can fully understand, because when he was signed with Minnesota, he was only 18 years old, and this was the first time that he actually left his native country in Uruguay. And when you leave a country at such a young age for the first time, that could be a very daunting task. And unfortunately for Thomas Chacon, maybe it was a little bit too much to overcome, and hence maybe that's why he wasn't getting enough minutes and that he just didn't perform the way that the Loons were hoping that he was going to do, at least in the training session. I mean, he has to not do well in the training session for a reason of why he was never being picked in the 11 or in the 18 on match day. Now, Orlando City have loaned Alexander Alvarado to LDU Quito, so here's another player that have rarely played for Orlando City, and another player that maybe is an example of maybe being a young player coming into MLS and just couldn't quite settle into a new country, and now it seems like decided to go back to his native country, though actually I'm not quite sure exactly if his native country is Ecuador, but at least it's in the same continent that he of course is from. And yeah, we'll see how he's going to do, whether if he's going to get some more minutes. And the difference between this than the last news I talked about is that he still have a chance to come back to Orlando City. They only loan him to that club, but there is also, from what I heard, an option to buy clause in that. So if he does well with LDU Quito, Orlando City might make a little bit of a profit out of that. And anytime when you have a player that haven't played a lot of minutes and you can still make a profit of it, that's considered to be a good thing. Though it's also going to be interesting to see if I remember how much Orlando City actually purchased him in the first place, because if you purchase him for big money and he turns out didn't work out and you have to loan to another club before the club that you loan to decide to exercise the option to buy, and that amount doesn't seem like it's as much as you first paid them to join your club, then you're basically losing profit in terms of that. Now, moving on, in terms of talk about some of the reports from this week, the Galaxy is report to close to sign Douglas Costa to a contract that is worth multi-million-dollar. Now, in the last News of the Week episode, I talked about how I thought this could potentially be a decent signing because, Douglas Costa, we know his time doing with Bayern Munich and also doing time with Juventus being one of the best winger in the league, and I just kind of wonder what has happened to him. Like, why is he all of a sudden just recently gone back to his native country in Brazil and joined Grêmio and part of that club that was relegated from the Brazilian Serie A? And then I found out later, from what I heard, is that he's been having some injury issue and also been having some partying issue where he likes to go to a lot of party and kind of focus on that more than the actual soccer career that he wants to pursue. And to go to a city like LA, which is the entertainment capital of the world, that might not be a great place for him to go, especially he could get easily distracted by that. But nevertheless, if he does sign with the Galaxy, I guess it's a decent signing, and in some way, he still has the talent. Like, when he's not injured, I have heard that he definitely show that flashes of his ability that he's shown during his day with Bayern Munich and Juventus. But again, if he's injury prone and if he has a problem with going to too much party and have an attitude problem, then we could potentially see another Giovanni Dos Santos situation. And I've already heard a lot of Galaxy fans are comparing to the GDS situation, where remember when they signed GDS, and the reason why they signed him was because they wanted to get butts in the seat and want to kind of connect to the Mexican community in LA. And while they kind of did a good job in terms of that, GDS turned out to be a huge buzz alongside with his brother, and now it's no wonder why both Dos Santos brothers doesn't play with the Galaxy anymore and is currently now playing with Club America. But now moving on, in terms of the next news, is that DC United is reported to sign Toluca striker Michael Estrada on loan. So, I talked about earlier that DC need to maybe find a replacement for Paul Arriola. And although this is not really a direct replacement because Arriola don't play in the number 9 position, this is definitely a replacement in terms of actually finding a decent number 9. I mean, technically they do have a decent number 9 in Ola Kamara, and I know Ola Kamara had a career year last season, but knowing how he is starting to get up to that age, I mean, I will be shocked if Ola Kamara can have another incredible year like he did last season. I mean, last season he really turned back the clock during his time with Columbus, and also his time with the Galaxy, of just being such a goal-scoring machine. So, DC realized that, and that they desperately need to have another number 9. And from what I heard is that they decided to sign this guy that, from what I heard from Toluca fan, he's not really as good as you think it is, and he does kind of had a bit of an attitude problem a little bit. And not to mention, I also heard that this seems like it could be a designated player signing that DC is going to do. Well, we'll see if it, of course, work out. I mean, they already tried to sign a DP player from Liga MX in Edison Flores, and yeah, that did not work out whatsoever with the numerous injury and setback that Edison Flores has. And although I haven't heard anything about Michael Estrada being injury prone during his time with Toluca, I'm just saying that, I understand DC want to maybe go back down to Liga MX and maybe sign some of the player down there so that they can, of course, turns out to be good in MLS. But we've seen before where just because you sign some good talent in Liga MX doesn't mean it always work out in MLS. And another player that I can think of right away that definitely did not work out now, even though he was very talented in Liga MX, is Rodolfo Pizarro. I mean, going to Miami, everybody thought that he was gonna do well, and then he turns out to be a huge flop. And now he's still with Inter Miami right now, but actually is now going back on loan and going back to the club that Inter Miami purchased him in the first place with Reyes. So yeah, we'll see whether or not if this signing is going to happen, and if it is going to happen, we'll see if he does well, and if he is going to be either another latest Liga MX player that flop when they come to MLS, or maybe for once actually do well and show that same talent that he has in Liga MX. Now, DC United is also to report to sell Kevin Paredes to Wolfsburg for $7.35 million plus a 10% sell-on fee. And I talked a little bit about this rumor last News of the Week episode, though this is just kind of a little bit more detailed information of the signing itself. And if you're DC, again, I would accept it. I mean, for Kevin Paredes, we know that he is definitely a guy that hasn't been talked a lot of how he could be another their latest American to make the jump to Europe, and he could be an upcoming star in not only in this league, but potentially maybe even this is a move for him to try to push into the U.S. men's national team. And especially, knowing the fact that he's also a midfielder, and we usually don't see midfielder unless you're one that is very recognized to be sold with that much of an amount. If you're DC, you absolutely take this, and not only you take this deal, but if Paredes does sell to another club, then DC could at least get 10% out of that because of the sell-on fee. Now, there's a report suggests that Galatasaray is interested in signing Montreal midfielder Victor Wanyama. So, Wanyama, it seems like he's looking to try to go back to Europe and trying to give it another try in terms of playing with a European team. I mean, people forget that this guy had an incredible career in his time in England and in Scotland, first with Celtic and then with Tottenham. But unfortunately, injuries kind of derail his career a little bit, and Montreal, of course, did take a bit of a risk to hope that it, of course, work out. And although in his first year he definitely did not work out, I thought last year he definitely started to show the sign of a player that we kind of know why he were part of two of the best team in the UK and in Scotland and in England. But if there is a good enough interest for Montreal to sell Victor Wanyama to oversee, I think they'll take it, and especially the fact that they're going to get a big amount of money. I mean, if you're an MLS team, you can't really say no to that. So yeah, we'll see if that of course does happen. But now moving on in terms of talk about some injury news, and unfortunately, got some bad news for Daryl DK, because yeah, he's out for 8 weeks with West Brom, and apparently I think it's either a knee or a shoulder injury that he has suffered, but that has to be a huge blow for Daryl DK and his chances to get back to the U.S. men's national team. And it's been all downhill ever since when he decided to go back to Orlando City from Barnsley, and that seems like he started to become a little bit injury prone with the way that he suffered an injury when he came back to Orlando City, though it was more with the national team. And then now he of course is out for 8 weeks with West Brom, a team that it seems like they desperately needed him when they of course signed him to a $9.5 million contract. But we'll see whether if he can, of course, do well. And that I heard that he, of course, suffered this injury only in his second game. I mean, what is it with American going to either the championship or going to the Premier League and they immediately get injured right away? I mean, we saw it with Paul Arriola, we saw it with Jordan Morris before. I mean, it just feels like that's kind of a weird things to see. But yeah, very unfortunate for DK, who's going to be out for 8 weeks, and definitely a huge setback of his chance to at least even be part of the U.S. men's national team for the remaining part of the World Cup qualifying. And then the last news, well, actually not the last news, but in terms of the last injury news of this news of the week, is that Andres Reyes, the New York Red Bulls defender, is going to be out for 4 to 6 months or out 4 to 6 months after undergoing foot surgery. So again, that definitely is not good news if you're the Red Bulls, who, Andres Reyes, he is a guy that when they first bought him from Inter Miami, he was a guy that it could be a good depth piece for him. And the only good news I will say is that at least the Red Bulls are going to get back Aaron Long. But let's say if Aaron Long does go down with an injury, or if any of those Red Bulls players go down with an injuries again, and yeah, they're going to be a little bit short in terms of the depth chart in that back line. But nevertheless, if you're Andres Reyes, again, it's another setback of the time that, it seems like he's been injured a lot, and it kind of similar to DK, where moving to another team and he instantly, of course, get injured. Although in the case of Andres Reyes, he only got injured I think last season, and was spending most of the time on the IR, and now it seems like he's going to go back to the IR because of this foot injury, that he needs to have foot surgery to basically repair that. And then finally, in the last news of this news of the week, is the U.S. Open Cup. It will now be featuring a record 103 teams, and will announce the draw sometime this week. And I hope it's going to be soon, because I really want to find out the first round draw, especially with the way that, I know you might think, why should I be looking forward to the first round draw when MLS team isn't going to be going in until the third round draw? That thing called a Sports Hop Series episode, and how I haven't done it in a couple of weeks. And also breaking news, I am gonna do a news, or well, not a news of the week episode. I mean, I'm doing a news of the week episode right now, but I'm gonna be doing an episode of the Sports Hop Series. I'm bringing it back, which I didn't actually announce that it was on hiatus because of some personal issue that I, of course, had to force that series to go on a bit of a hiatus. But it is gonna come back this week, at least for this week, until we'll see whether if I'm going to once again push that to a hiatus on that series again. But the reason why I really want to find out this first round draw is that's when I'm going to be going to these games and doing the Sports Hop Series episode. So on these games, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how the U.S. Open Cup is going to play, and I'm definitely excited the fact that it's back. I mean, it's been 3 years since the U.S. Open Cup was last played, because the 2020 and the 2021 edition was canceled because of COVID, and I can't wait until it is now back, and we shall see whether we're going to have another feel-good story. I mean, I feel like the U.S. Open Cup, I know people said before that an MLS team eventually is going to win the competition, which that seems like it's going to be the case once again. But we're starting to see that FA Cup kind of vibe with the U.S. Open Cup, where sometime when you get to maybe the third or fourth round, you do see these feel-good story of these lower league team playing against some USL championships or even an MLS side, and that's just something you don't usually see happen a lot. And again, I always love to see that with the way that there's just, it means a lot to these lower league team that they definitely dream to not only play in this competition but get a chance to play against a team in near the top of the American soccer pyramid. Yeah, that has to be a great feeling for them if they ever get a chance to do so. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if there's any other news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.